everybody. Dan Illman, Ashley Mailloux, taking a look at the DRF race of the day for Sunday, October the 1st. It's the third jewel in Canada's Triple Crown. Let's take a look at the big field, the overflow field for the Breeders' Stakes, race number 9 at Woodbine on Sunday. We're going 1.5 miles on the turf. That's one circuit around the expansive EP Taylor turf course. Please click the link for race of the day access on mobile, which includes free formulator past performances. And Paramount Prince, the King's Plate winner, might try to take this field gate to wire as he did in the King's Plate.
Yeah, he might try to do so. Was unable to replicate that, though, at Fort Erie in the Prince of Wales. I still thought he raced a really good race over the track conditions. It downpoured earlier in the card. It was sloppy. Something that he had to tackle is not only the dirt, but also in off track. We're also going to see Coca Kaipu also try to, participate in all 3 legs of the Canadian Triple Crown. But Dan, I think there's something to be said about some of the horses that are a little fresher and maybe were strategically pointing for this race.
And that's a very good point, Ashley. And for those that are not familiar with the Canadian Triple Crown, obviously it's spaced at a different rate than the American Triple Crown, and also 3 separate surfaces: the King's Plate on synthetic, the Prince of Wales on dirt, and the Breeders on turf. So you got to be versatile to campaign over this entire series. We'll throw up the Timeform US pace projector, and not surprisingly, we do have the 7 Paramount Prince expected to make the lead. He's simply the fastest out of the gate. Now we'll see if he can successfully transfer his good synthetic and dirt form to turf.
Yeah, this will be the test, and it's going 1.5 miles. Kind of looking at this pace projection, you see British Artillery. He's a horse that's a turf horse through and through. He's been pretty close to some decent fractions early on, so I pretty much agree with this. And I think the big thing with this being a big field, there are a couple horses towards the outside that can be tactical, and they might have to going 1.5 miles. It's just a different configuration. Woodbine's EP Taylor turf course is just tremendous. A little different in terms of its dimensions and how it's configured, but I think some of these horses are going to have to get a good position early on and hopefully moderate fractions up front.
It's been a tale of 2 Triple Crown races thus far for the one Coco Kaipu, a horse that disappointed a bit in the King's Plate. He was just one of those horses that didn't show up, albeit he had a wide trip. He came back with a very good performance on dirt in the Prince of Wales. Here he is angling to the outside, and he's going to make this relatively close at the wire, finishing a good second. He's one of those horses that's tactical enough to work out his trip from this inside post.
He certainly is, and I thought he ran one heck of a race in the Prince of Wales. Just seeing him continue to try to battle it out on the stretch and to make up that ground, I was very impressed. And it's been interesting to watch the way he's been managed in his workouts before both the Plate and the Prince of Wales. We're talking very quick works, which sometimes I'm not a big fan of, but he really handled the dirt well. Now he's going to get back on the turf. He's got a couple of turf races under his belt. No, he doesn't have a turf win up at Woodbine, but I think they're fair races. They're earlier in his career as well, and I think just looking at the horse that he's been in his last 4 or 5 starts, he's a different animal. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles the 1.5 miles. But I think looking at his trip at 1 mile and 3/16, he raced very well. Obviously, we know that the Plate was sort of a disappointing performance from him.
A horse taking a big step up in class and distance is the number 2 British Artillery, who might be the one to prompt the early pace. He kind of made an early move into the teeth of the pace last time out in the Toronto Cup, going a 1-turn mile, flattened out a bit late. I'm just not sure 1.5 miles chasing a quality front runner is going to be the key to victory. You'll get a price if you believe.
You'll get a big price, I think. And I completely agree with you. I think if you look at his last 3, he hasn't offered enough, in my opinion, in the stretch to be competitive at 1.5 miles against this group. Even last time out, it was similar to what happened 3 starts back, going 1 mile and a 16th. So I just think it's a little bit of a hard case to make for British Artillery.
The number 3 is Simcoe. He's going to try turf for the first time. He's the son of Uncle Mo, and they ran him in the Plate trial last time out. Caught a tough post position that day, raced wide throughout. If you want to draw a line through that performance, I get it. And he's one of those fresh horses that you referenced in the Open. A lot of these horses have been through the grind of the Triple Crown Trail. Simcoe comes into this race fresh.
He's very fresh, and he's got a lot of nice workouts under his belt in preparation for this race. I really respect the connections and what they do in terms of how they handle their horses, how they move them from synthetic to turf. And I still think we're going to need to see more, just knowing who he faced in the Marine and the Plate trial. And I agree with you, though, with the Plate trial. I think it's a tough race to make a case for because Paramount Prince made things look very easy, but the fractions were soft. The runner-up, Cool Kiss, was able to make up a ton of ground, and it's tough for me to look at other horses in there because I think you can make excuses or you can say, well, they just weren't ready to roll. So he's another one in here, going to be a big price and going to get a new rider for the first time.
The number 4, Hemlow Gold, is a horse with some upside potential, and he's coming into this race in good form after an upset win in a 2-life allowance last month. And Hemlow Gold got a great trip and ride in this race. He showed good early speed. He was able to get to the top on the inner turf course, back down the fractions, and stayed strong in the stretch. That trip isn't available to him here, but it's nice to know that he rallied from off the pace to win his maiden 3 starts back. Big step up in class.
It was funny. He didn't really take respect in that spot, and I thought his race 2 back was okay. That maybe warranted a little bit of respect, but there was a heavy favorite in there. He was able to take them gate to wire. Waters are deeper. He's stretching out. I will say, though, I think he has a bit of versatility. I know he's been closer in his last 2, but even when they put blinkers on for the first time when he was able to graduate, he was further back. But just knowing, again, it's tough in here. We have fillies. We have horses trying the turf for the first time. There's all these different variables. He's one that I think it's a little bit of a tough case to make for.
Tiburon, the number 5, is one of the horses trying turf for the first time, and he showed some ability in his second lifetime start. They stretched him out around 2 turns for the first time. He rallied very nicely to win the maiden. Then they tried the plate trial. Then they tried the Prince of Wales. I think he has to prove that this isn't too much too soon for a promising colt. 5th lifetime start, turf debut against some quality horses, going 1.5 miles.
Yeah, they are trying a lot with him, and he's a horse that, they did prep him at Fort Erie for the Prince of Wales. I think they liked what they saw, and it just didn't come together. He was shuffled pretty far back in that race, and that's typically what goes on for him, right? He is more of a closer in some sense, and I'm not sure here when you think about 1.5 miles, I guess there's 2 ways to think about it. If you have a horse that's loose on the lead, say it is Paramount Prince, does he have the stamina to go 1.5 miles? Is everyone trying to catch him in the stretch? You go back a couple of years ago thinking of a horse like Mighty Heart. That's kind of what happened. They all caught him in the end. But, if for some reason there is a little bit of a pace setup, he could close. But I think probably a minor share at best against this group.
Tito's Calling, the number 6, is a filly that looks to be coming into her own at just the right time. Let's watch her win in the Wonder Where last time out. This race going 1.25 miles, and she got a very nice trip and a beautiful ride. The inside opened up. The jock moved at just the right time. The rail is there for her, and she does the rest. She finishes up very strongly. I think distance is not going to be an issue for this filly, and she's one of those tactical ones that can sit in mid-pack or so.
Yeah, she raced really well, and I think the big impressive thing about her is the stretch run, right? Her kick is really good, and the fractions for 1.25 miles, they weren't blistering. We know that. I mean, they almost went 52 and change to the half in there, 117. It was slow, but I think it came down to trip, and she's tactical. She should be pretty close to it, maybe a handful of lengths off the pace. Now, she is going to face male rivals, which is something she hasn't done, where a couple of the other fillies in here, they have done that. But I think having a turf win going longer than even, say, 1.125 miles bodes well for her.
Here's the King's Plate winner, the number 7, Paramount Prince. We'll take a look at his win in the first jewel of the Triple Crown, and he left no doubt. He went right to the lead. He set a pretty legitimate pace, and he kept right on rolling along to win. In the Prince of Wales, he did his absolute best. Completely new circumstances for him. Not only dirt, a sloppy track. He had to go a lot faster on the lead. He hung in there pretty gamely for third. It's all about if he can get a breather and if he wants to go 1.5 miles, because the quality, there's no question about that.
Yeah, he has a ton of talent, and I think, you talked about the fractions in the King's Plate. I think the impressive thing is he found another gear in the stretch there. He was coming from that 1.125 mile race to 1.25 miles. Dirt race, I still thought was impressive considering what he had to do early where other horses were trying to pick up the pieces late. I do think the track condition played to it in as well. You wonder with the slop, is your hand forced? You have a speed horse. You probably have to go and see how long you can last. And it was a pretty deep track. It was very sloppy in terms of the conditions. So we'll see what he can do on the turf. You would assume from his synthetic races that won't be the issue. I do think the biggest issue, though, is if anyone presses him, can he go the distance?
A horse that's looking for a bit of a hot pace up front is the late developing number 8, Sammy Stone, who finished 4th last time out in his return to stakes competition in the Toronto Cup. I think he's a one-run closer at this point, even stretching out to a mile and a half. I like his pedigree for this distance, but I'm not sure if he's good enough at this stage to tackle this level of competition.
I'm not sure either. It took him a while to figure it out. When he broke his main, it was against 3-year-olds and older going a mile. I thought it was a good performance, but he got a little bit of a setup going a mile. There was a little pace for him. And his last two, I would say they've been okay. They're not bad racers. They're not good races. He's just a horse that I think, he's in deep waters. And in the mile and a half, I mean, he seems like he can probably run all day long because he is picking up the pieces late, but I just don't know if he gets the setup in here.
And number 9 is Midnight in Mailloux. This one didn't run very well at a big price in the King's Plate. He rebounded with a solid enough try in this allowance race, going a one-turn mile and an eighth, where he made a big mid-race move, well, wide to get into contention, and then he just flattened out late. I'm not sure if that bodes well for him as he stretches out to a mile and a half, but maybe with more patient tactics, he can kick for at least a piece at a price.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same opinion of you. I'm not sure what to make out of the performance. When horses make a big move and then they get tired in those last, maybe 16th to the wire. I don't necessarily love that, but it certainly was an improved performance. He did get tested a little bit. I thought it was a decent group that he had faced there with his older rivals, and he's faced older rivals in several of his starts now. So I think it was a good starting point. I like that he has the turf race under his belt. It was just on September 16th, so they're wheeling him back just about 2 weeks later. One of his better performances, but I don't know. The mile and a half would be the concern. If that was maybe a mile and a quarter race where he did that, I think we would have some more fitness.
The 10 is Philip My Dear, and I think there's one of two ways to look at Philip My Dear. One, that he was an exceptional 2-year-old, that perhaps they've caught up with him now at 3, and he hasn't improved on his 2-year-old form. B, and this is the one you're going to be looking at if you want to back this horse at a price, is maybe getting back to turf is what he wants, because the last time we saw him on the grass, he won the Cup and Saucer. Maybe he's just a better turf horse all along.
I think he probably is a better turf horse. Obviously, you would have liked to see more in his 3 starts this year. I will say, going back to the plate, people try different things in the big race, especially when you don't know, when you have a horse like him, right? He's been a little forward here and there, but typically he's far back. So it looked like they put the blinkers on to maybe get him involved early. And I don't think the blinkers helped him at all. So I like that they're coming back off. I like that he gets back on the turf. I actually think the distance probably isn't a problem. When you look at him late last year, he did have a really solid third in the Coronation Futurity, going a mile and eighth late in the 2022 year. But he still hasn't offered that much to me, at least I think, in 2023.
I think the 11 Touch and Ride is a real sleeper in here. Very lightly raced, a ton of upside potential, a good-looking maiden winner, 2 starts back on the synthetic. When you go into your free formulator past performances, click on the short comment. The video comes up. You get to watch the race of the King's Plate. Touch and Ride did not have a good trip, and that was just on top of the fact, first-time winners, first-time stakes horses. They threw a lot at him. All things considered, he ran well.
I think he raced really well, and I remember I texted Lane Guilford, who I've known for years, asked him if he's going to the Prince of Wales. He wasn't sure. This was the long-term goal. They have been aiming for this race, and I think there's a lot to look at, right? He raced really well on the turf in his first start. I think he can go longer, and considering how he ran in the plate with the trip that he got, I kind of like him at a mile and a half. I think there's a lot of upside on him, and going to get Kazushi Kimura. He's been attracted to ride this horse. I think that's a positive sign, and they've been working him steadily for this, and he's had some really nice turf drills.
Another runner that skipped the Prince of Wales to run in the breeders is the very good filly, the number 12 Elysian Field. This is your Woodbine Oaks winner. She got a pretty good trip in the King's Plate. She tracked the leader. She tried to go after the winner early down towards the inside at the quarter pole. Couldn't go with them then, but got to the outside and still held second. I think distance is going to be okay for Elysian Field. I love her tactical speed, and I like that they gave her a break since that last race. Didn't push her in the Prince of Wales. Mark Casse trains.
I really like her in this spot as well. I think, she's got post 12. She's going to have to work out a little bit of trip from there. But as you mentioned, she has that tactical early foot. I could see her sitting in maybe 4th or 5th early on, just a couple of lengths off the pace setter. And she had to run second to her stablemate. But just to see her races, she has been spot on. And I think she's really developed since she had that short break earlier this year, and she's gotten up to Woodbine. You can't knock basically any of her performances. And she does have a couple turf races under her belt. I know it was earlier in her career, but the turf shouldn't be an issue either.
The 13 is two-way crossing, and this horse just didn't run in the King's Plate. Now, he missed the break badly, and that pretty much cost him all chance, but I would have liked to have seen him do some running after that. His prior performance, he was entered for a $40,000 tag. He did win, and he earned a solid enough buyer speed figure that day. He's just going to have to do a little more.
He's going to have to do more. I would be a little concerned with him as well, because I do think he is a bit of a one type of a dimension horse, right? He's typically closing from off of it. He'll need some setup. I do like, though, that he does have a win. He won on debut, which is not necessarily something we see all the time from Roger Attfield horses. When I think of Roger Attfield, I think of horses that are developing with age. But horse got a really nice trip there, going 7 ace. To me, it's a tough, another one, maybe a tough case to make for, but he's bred for turf.
The final horse in the body of the field is another good filly. That's the 14 Wickenheiser, second in the Woodbine Oaks, second in the Wonder Wear. Now, we saw the video of the Wonder Wear. You saw the winner sneak on through along the inside. She probably had a better trip overall than Wickenheiser. I'm not sure it would have mattered if you reversed the trips the way Tito's Calling ran that day. But Wickenheiser is just kind of an underrated, under-the-radar horse that's going to be a good price in this race.
She is, and I was expecting a lot more from her in the King's Plate, just looking at the way she was kind of getting into form. I know she only had one win going into there, but her Woodbine Oaks, when she was second behind Lycian Fields, I thought it was a really well-meant second, and she didn't fire in the King's Plate. I like, though, that they decided to take her off kind of the Triple Crown Trail just for that one race, right, and they put her on the turf. I think she raced well overall, and I think she's one. I'm not sure she can win this race, but if I was playing the exotics and the price was right, I think she's a must-use underneath.
15 through 18 entered on the also eligible list. If they happen to get into the race, they'll all be big prices. Legal Catch is interesting to me simply because this horse has, I would assume, some speed stretching out 5 furlongs off the most recent start. Before we get to our top picks, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Now it's time for our top picks for the Breeders' Stakes, third Jewel of Canada's Triple Crown. You're going with Touch and Ride. I think you're getting a good price on a horse with a ton of upside and who's dirtied up off of a tough trip.
I think he's been really impressive in 3 starts from a limited, campaign so far, as we mentioned. Trip wasn't good in the King's Plate, but he still raced well overall. And I think looking at the horses that I was most impressed with, he was probably second out of that performance. And as I mentioned, this is what they've been aiming for. I think he's going to run a big race. We'll see if he's good enough to win it. I still think overall, Dan, it's a pretty competitive field, and I can understand why you went with one of the fillies in here on top.
Yeah, I want to use your horse. I certainly respect the plate winner, but Elysian Field to me just looks rock solid, a kind of horse that can work out her own trip. And like you, I think Turf's going to be okay. That debut at Saratoga Sprinting, it looked like she handled it just fine. Slightly better price than the plate winner. We'll see if Elysian Field can get over the top for Mark Casse. 11-12-1-7 for Ashley, 12-7-11-2 for me. It should be a great betting race. The Breeders at Woodbine on Sunday. Best of luck.